Hello and welcome to Learning Music with Pat. I'm going to start off today and talk about some timing and just review a little with you on timing, and I may do this every time for a few more sessions to get it clear in your mind what we're talking about. How much is a quarter note worth? How much is a half note worth? And how much is a whole note worth? So I'm going to start off with this particular chart here, and I can move this so it's more central, make it easier to see. Okay, now we're going to talk about the timing. The time signature is right here, and we're dealing with 4/4, and that's a very common time signature to music today. 3/4 is common, but you can do all kinds of time signatures. So let's start with this. This clear round circle is a whole note. And in 4/4 time, it's worth 4 beats. Now, in 3/4 time, it would be worth 3 beats. It is whatever the time signature says that it's worth. So if you're having 4/4 time, which is usual, then this is worth 4 beats. And I have it just written out here on the staff so you'll be able to see it. All it is a circle with nothing in it. Now, a half note is half of that whole note, and it's a round circle with a stem on it. I've got it written here, a half note, it's worth 2 beats. So there are 2 of them that would be equal to the whole. And so therefore, you have it written down here, a couple of measures of half notes. A quarter note is that half note which is split in half. Now the quarter note is all blackened in. The body of the note, the round circle, is all darkened in with black usually. That's the way music is. It's usually black and white. And it all has the stem in different directions, and it's worth 1 beat. So what we're saying here in this time signature is you have 4 beats to the measure. A quarter note gets 1 beat. There's 1 beat for every quarter note. These are the quarter notes, 1, 2, 3, 4. Imagine that you had a piece of pie, a round pie, and you cut it. And you cut it in half. Well, that's 2. You cut it in half again, that's the quarters. You have 4 quarters, 2 halves, and then you get the whole. Now, you can split this quarter note and get eighth notes. You have the round body, and it's all blackened in. You have the stem and 1 flag. This little line is called a flag. And if you have several notes that are eighth notes, you can draw a line between them, and that's the flag for both of them. In fact, I have it down here. I have 4 notes. This is not unusual at all, and a flag for all of them. They are all considered to be eighth notes. And here's a couple of eighth notes with a flag between them, and here's a couple of eighth notes with a flag between them. Now, when we get to the 16ths, you have 2 flags instead of 1. So here's a 16th. I know this is getting tiny, but I think you can see it. The body of the note, the stem, 2 flags, the bodies of 2 of these notes, and there are 2 lines going across. Those are double flag for both of those notes, so they're both 16th notes. And I have it written here in different kinds of ways. Here you have 4 16ths with a stem going up. Here the flags and the stem are going down, 4, but it's a double line, so they're still 16ths. You can have individual notes with 2 little stems on them, 2 little flags on them. They're 16th notes. There are different ways of writing them. Now what I want to do is take this one down and use this one for a minute. And I'm talking once again about the time signature. 4/4, and we're talking about quarter notes, 4 quarter notes, each one has 1 beat. So this is the number of beats to the measure, and this is the kind of note that gets 1 beat. If you can remember that distinction, then you'll understand the time signature. Here are the quarter notes, 1, 2, 3, 4. That would be a measure. I don't have a measure line here, but there would be the measure, and each of those quarter notes gets 1 beat. But there are some others that you might not even think about. How about 9/4? I saw a hymn the other day, and it was written in 9/4 time. And I thought to myself, why not write it easier? Why not make it 3/4 or something like that? People are used to 3/4. That's like waltz tempo. People should be used to that. But 9/4, you hardly see it. But it's 9 beats to the measure, and a quarter note still gets 1 beat. That's what that 4 means. It's a quarter. Now, if I had a 2 down there, then a half note would get 1 beat. Whatever this number is down here, that tells you what gets 1 beat. And here it's a quarter note. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This is a half. These are eighth notes, so there are 2 to a quarter note, and this is your 9th. So you can have as many beats in a measure as you want. I could have 35/4, 35 being the number of beats to the measure. I'd never do it, but technically there's no reason why I couldn't. So I could have like 35 beats to a measure and 4 underneath it, and 4 would still mean that the quarter note gets 1 beat. So the notes would be equivalent to 35 quarter notes. Now I might break them up into 16ths, I might break them up into 8ths, I might make a dotted halves out of them. There's all kinds of things I could do in combination. But the whole measure is going to be worth 35 beats. But underneath is that 4. And that means the quarter note still gets 1 beat. Here's 24. 20 beats to the measure. I'll count this out. This is just one measure, terribly long, but nonetheless, it has to be. It has 20 beats in it. 1, 2, 3, 4. This will be 5, 6, because you've got eighth notes, and the eighth notes are 2 to a beat. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. I hope I counted that right. But at any rate, it's 20 beats to the measure. And the half notes just get a half a beat. So the half note, the eighth note gets a half of a beat. So therefore, this is going to be 1 beat right here, 2 eighths. And this is going to be another beat right here, another 2 eighths. And this is going to be another beat right here because there's 2 eighths. Now, if I wanted to, I could put 4/16ths in, and 4/16ths would be equal to 1 beat. So 1 beat of those 20 beats in the measure could be 4/16th notes. You can break it down in any way that you want to. In complicated music, you just have to remember, as long as that 4 is down there, that quarter note gets 1 beat. And the 3/4, that's 3/4, that's like waltz tempo. 1, 2, 3, a quarter note still gets that 1 beat. 1, 2, 3, and this is going to be 1, 2. A half note gets 2 beats, and this is your 3rd beat. And then you have 1 and 2 and 3 and they're all eighth notes, but it's still equivalent to that 3 beats to the measure. 1 beat, 2 beats, and 3 beats. The dotted half is automatically 3 beats, and you know the whole note can be 3 beats too. Where up here, a whole note might be a whole measure, and it may be just 4 beats, as I showed you in the other chart that I showed you. So a dotted half is 3 beats, but a whole note is 3 beats too. And the reason the whole note is 3 beats instead of 4 is the fact that the time signature allows for only 3 beats to a measure. So a whole note is going to be whatever the time signature says is in a measure. And in this case, it's going to be 3 beats, where normally if you had 4/4 time, it would be 4 beats to the measure, and a whole note would be equal to 4 beats. What if your measure is only 2 beats to a measure? Then that whole note is only going to be worth 2 beats because it's whatever the time signature says it is that it is. Sound confusing? Well, not so much. If you look at this, I hope it'll come out clear. I just kind of did this fast, but here's your whole. Normally 4 beats. This would be half. 2 beats to each half would be equal to the whole. Split it again and it's quarters. Each quarter gets 1 beat but it's the same thing. In terms of a whole measure, it's 4 beats. Each one gets a beat. Then you can subdivide to eighth notes. You can subdivide to 16th notes. You can go even further. You can get 32nd notes, which we're not dealing with here because it would be a little too difficult for us, or a 64th notes, which would be even a further subdivision. Those notes go very fast, but we're not worried and not talking about 32nd and 64th notes. It's just like a further subdivision. And more complicated music sometimes has those notes, but you don't see them too often, but professionals are used to kind of playing them. So I wanted to show you those. Now I'm going to play, and I'm also going to show you, so I need to take this down here. This is a waltz. This is a waltz. It's written in 12/4 time. And how do I get the 12/4? Remember, the 12 is the number of beats to the measure, and the 4 indicates that a quarter note gets 1 beat. So this is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And let me explain. 3 beats to the dotted half, because a dotted half does have 3 beats. Why? Because a half note gets 2 beats, and if you add a dot to it, that gives it another beat, because it gives it half the value of the note before it. So this is worth 2 beats. You have that dot. That gives it half of the value of that note, which is 1 beat. So totally, that gets to be 3 beats. This is 2 beats because it's a half note. These are all 1 beat because they're quarter notes. And here's another dotted half, which gives it another 3 beats. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And it's similar for the rest of the measures in the waltz, because they're all equal to 12 beats to the measure. Now I can subdivide it and change it to what I think would be more realistic and do it in 3/4 time. We're used to seeing 3/4 time. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And so it goes. It's 3 beats to the measure. It's exactly the same song as I have written in up here. The only thing is I've shortened the amount of beats per measure, so you have more measures and less beats in the measure, but you can see even the notes are the same. The dotted half here, the dotted half here. This is 3 beats, this is 3 beats, but since you have 12/4, you're going to add a lot of notes to get that 12 beats. Here, you shorten the measure. This is 3 beats, 3 beats, 3 beats all along. It's exactly the same thing. And I could even do it and make it into 6/4 time. Now, in the 6/4 time, I'd have twice as many notes in the measure as the 3/4 time, but it's exactly the same song. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's exactly the same song. I am subdividing it differently and counting the time differently, but in the end, it's exactly the same song. So what I'm going to do is play this, and I'm going to play the top one, but really, you're not going to know which one I play because the song is exactly the same. But I'd like to have you see if you can follow along and see what I'm doing. I just want you to understand the concept. This is just a little waltz that I wrote. And it's not hard at all, but it's something that it's good if you're a beginning student to play it and get used to the way that you count the measures. So this is how it goes. Now I've written this in the key of G, which means it's just one sharp. The F sharp is sharped, and every time you get to the sharp, or you get to an F sharp, you automatically sharp that because it's in the key signature. The key signature and the time signature are talking about pretty much the same location. When you get this, you get the clef. This is treble clef. Most woodwinds play, except for one exception that I know. Most woodwinds play in treble clef. That means they've got the higher notes. And this is your key signature, the number of flats or sharps. That's your key signature. And in this case, it's F sharp, so it's in the key of G. And this 12/4 is your time signature. So the time and the key and the clef all together is one. You read it, though, as separate because you can understand what key you're in, how many sharps and flats you're going to play, what the time is, and the fact that you're in treble clef. Now, if you're playing saxophone, clarinet, oboe, bassoon, flute, and the recorders, the penny whistles, most of the melody instruments are all going to be in the treble clef. The bass is sometimes I have seen fingering charts for basses that are bass clef rather than treble. In fact, in one case, I have a fingering chart for a bass, and it's a bass like the one that I have, and it plays both treble and bass. Depends upon what you want to read it in. If you want to read it in bass, it's written out. If you want to read it in treble, you can do that too. I usually read everything in treble because I play all of the other woodwind instruments that are also in treble clef. So it's just easier for me to read everything in treble clef. But the bass does have some people reading it in the bass clef. It's very large, it's very deep, and it can be done. Okay, so that's 12/4. All of these fit into 12 beats to a measure. And then when we get down here, 3/4 is what we normally would use, and it's exactly the same song. And we can also do it in 6/4, which is exactly the same song. So you have different ways of writing. You have different ways of reading music. I saw a hymn, and what kind of tipped me off to this might be an issue for you is the fact that I was playing a hymn the other day in a service, and it was written in 9/4. And I'm thinking, why 9/4? Why not make it simpler? 9/4. Very rarely do you get music in which you're counting 9 beats to a measure, but it does exist, and it does exist in some hymns. And I tend to think one of the reasons that, and this is just my interpretation, if you have a complicated bass or complicated harmonies, it might be easier to get all of that spaced in better if you use that 12/9 or 12/4 signature or 9/4 signature rather than making it shorter, because it might be easier to spread out the bass notes or the tenor notes, whatever notes you have in the other clef, that make it difficult to fit it all in together. Otherwise, you might have very scrunched up bass notes in order to fit underneath the treble. Excuse me. So if I'm looking at this as treble clef, and I've got these 12 notes to the measure, ending right here, they can put a lot of bass notes underneath that and have the space for it. But if I scrunch it up into 3 beats to a measure, it might be hard to get all the bass notes in. That's the only reason I can think of why it would be done, because when you read music, they like to keep, if you get music and you get a total score, you get the bass, you get the treble, you've got soprano, alto, tenor, and bass. You at least have those 4 parts. Sometimes you can have contralto and other kinds of parts too. And they want to keep them all together. So if you look at your melody, here's your melody, but underneath it are your altos, your tenors, your basses, and they want to keep them all in line so you don't see various places what the measures are. They're all in line. And so they may need more space to put in more notes, and so they spread out the soprano part in order to accommodate the amount of notes that they have to write in the bass or alto clef. So that's one reason for doing it, and I've seen music like that, so I know it exists. But if you're just playing it yourself as a solo, no one's going to be playing with you, you're playing for your own pleasure, you're only playing your part, then you're not going to spread it out wide, you're going to keep it together. And in this 3 lines, you can get a whole song, you can get a whole melody. If you look at Handel's Messiah, you know, you can get 3 or 4 measures to a page because you've got all of the parts lined up. Even the piano part or an orchestral part is written in there as well. And you may only be able to get like 3 measures to a page or 6 measures to a page, depending upon how much you want to put in on a page. And different companies put it in different ways. Most people read the Schirmer score if they're doing Handel's Messiah, and you have to flip your pages fairly often because there's a lot of people singing different parts all at the same time, and you can look in one spot and look down and see everybody's part. Now you have to also think in terms of a conductor. A conductor has to conduct all of this, and he's not going to want one part over here and one part over there. He has to have it all together so he knows when one part comes in relation to what other people are doing on their parts, and these people have to be cued to come in at the right time, cueing them, something like this, pointing to them, now it's your turn to come in. You know, a conductor has got a big job. And so all of this plays a part as to how the music is constructed and how it's put together. So I'm going to play this one more time because we don't have a lot of time left. I just want you to try to read the top. That's going to be the easiest for you. And see if you can count along. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. It's going to be hard to do. If you were looking down here, it'd be a lot easier to do. So kind of take your choice. This is a simple waltz, but it's written in different time signatures, but it's exactly the same waltz. So let me start once again on this, and it doesn't go very fast. Now, the other things that you can learn from this, making sure you tongue right, making sure that you're not slurring because there are no slurs in this. I haven't put any slurs or ties in it. Being able to read where the sharps are. I do have a couple of accidentals. There's one right there. That's the main one, I guess. And knowing where your ties are, your slurs are, being able to count the music, and being able to tongue, which is critical. If I couldn't tongue, it would sound like this. You do get all the notes, but it's not crisp, it's not clear, and most people would just get a sloppy mess out of it. So I'm going to close it here. We'll be doing something else next time. Please join me then.